Construction Nightmare. True horror stories from construction workers. This is Mr. H. You're listening to Masked Horror. Buried beneath concrete. My name is Rob, and I've worked construction for over 20 years. I've seen my share of injuries, accidents, and stupid rookie mistakes, but nothing compares to what happened during the Las Vegas casino job. It started like any other project. A big-time developer was building a high-rise casino right off the strip, and we were working on the foundation. The desert heat was brutal, the hours were long, and the foreman, Jim, pushed us hard. One of the old-timers on the crew, Mark, was always talking about the old Vegas, the days when the mob ran everything. He'd tell stories about guys disappearing, their debts wiped clean because they were dumped in the wet concrete of unfinished casinos. The stories were half folklore, half terrifying. Back in the 70s, Mark said one night, wiping sweat from his neck, they didn't just fire you, they made sure no one ever found you. We all laughed it off. Mark was the kind of guy who'd tell ghost stories just to pass the time. But what happened next, it wasn't a story, it was real. We were pouring the foundation late one evening, one of the deepest pits I'd ever worked on. A crew of us stood near the cement mixer, making sure everything went smooth. That's when we heard it. A knock. Faint at first, like a single dull thud against the metal frame of the rebar. Jim grunted. Air pockets, he muttered. It was common in big pours, nothing to worry about. Then it happened again. Louder, more distinct. Bang, bang, bang. The hair on my arm stood up. Mark was the first to react. He frowned, stepping toward the edge of the foundation pit, looking down at the thickening cement. Then the pounding started. Not just a knock, frantic, desperate pounding, like someone was trapped down there, like someone was fighting to get out. The crew went silent. The sound echoed through the site, a deep, hollow thudding from beneath the cement. Mark's face turned pale. We gotta stop the pour. Jim snapped at him. Are you insane? You think there's a body down there? Mark didn't answer. He just stared at the concrete, his breathing heavy. I'll never forget the look in his eyes. Pure terror. I don't know why, but I stepped closer, leaning down. The air felt thick. My own breath caught in my throat. Then I heard it. A muffled voice. Help, please. I shot back so fast I nearly tripped. Shut it down, Mark yelled. Something's wrong. We have to dig. But Jim refused. He said it was just settling, just noise from the shifting material. So we kept going, and the pounding stopped. I wish I could say that was the worst of it. I wish I could say that's where the nightmare ended, but it wasn't. Not even close. That night, Mark didn't show up for his night shift. His truck was found in the parking lot, his work gear untouched. No one saw him leave. No one knew where he went. Jim brushed it off, said Mark probably got spooked and bailed, but we all knew something was off. Mark was a lifer. He wouldn't just quit like that. Over the next few days, something felt off at the site. The air was heavy. The other workers avoided the foundation like it was cursed. Even the foreman seemed uneasy. Then a week later, one of the new guys, Miguel, came running up from the foundation pit, white as a sheet. Mark is down there, he stammered. We all froze. Miguel was shaking. I saw him, his face, it's in the concrete. Jim blew up, told us all to shut the hell up and get back to work, but we couldn't ignore it anymore. That night, a couple of us went down there just to look. The foundation was set and dry by then, smooth and unmarked, like it had never been touched. But then, I saw it. A shape beneath the surface. I don't know if it was my mind playing tricks on me. One moment I saw a face, the next, I didn't. I felt my stomach drop. I staggered back. A couple of the guys wanted to say something, but the company, they wouldn't hear it. There was no body, no evidence. To them, it was just a story to slack off or slow down the project. The casino opened a couple of years later. No one talks about Mark. No one mentioned the knocking in the concrete. But some nights, when the casino is quiet and the guests are asleep, some workers say they hear something from beneath the floor in the basement. A muffled, low pounding, bang, 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 like someone desperately trying to get out. One guy swears he saw a dark figure in a hard hat standing near the back service hallway, only to vanish when he looked again. I don't work in Vegas anymore. I moved back home, but sometimes I still hear the knocking, even when I close my eyes at night, and I wonder how many more are buried beneath the city, and worse, how many are still screaming. The house that ate dogs. My name is Ethan, and I used to flip houses for a living. I say used to because after what happened in Boston last year, I don't think I'll ever step foot inside an abandoned house again. I never planned on flipping houses. At first, it was just a side job, something I did with my uncle during summers in high school. He taught me the basics, how to tear down walls, refinish floors, bring an old place back to life. But for me, it was more than just work. I loved the transformation, taking something broken and forgotten and turning it into something beautiful again. Most people see a rotting house and thought it was worthless, but I could always see what it could be. Victorian homes were my favorite. The craftsmanship, the history, the stories buried in the walls. They had a soul that newer houses just didn't. Every house had a past, and I liked being the one to write its next chapter. But some places, some houses don't want to be saved. And I learned the hard way that not everything old is meant to be made new again. This particular house sat on a quiet street, a massive Victorian with turrets and stained glass, the kind that would be worth millions if restored right. It had been sitting empty for over 40 years, and I managed to scoop it up at a fraction of the price. There was just one problem. The neighbors didn't want to talk about it. "That house isn't right," the old man next door muttered when I introduced myself. I laughed it off. Every old house has history, right? Looking back, I was just looking at dollar signs, but I should have listened. A week into the renovations, my crew started ripping up the rotting floorboards on the first floor. I was in the kitchen when I heard my lead carpenter scream. I ran into the front room. Izzy and two others stood frozen, staring at something beneath the torn-up floor. At first, I thought it was just rat bones, maybe an old infestation, but as I got closer, I saw the collars, the tiny chain leashes. And then I saw the scratches, deep claw marks on the inside of what looked like an old wooden crate, sealed shut. There were about 20 of them. Izzy gagged and turned away. "Who the hell does this?" he whispered. We stopped work for the day. That night, I started digging into the house's history. I couldn't find much, but there was some info. There were police reports, calls from neighbors about horrific howling coming from the house at all hours. The cops came twice for noise complaints. Eventually, the complaint stopped, but the previous owner just left the house abandoned and their whereabouts were unknown. No body, no trace, just gone. The next day, Izzy refused to come back. "I'm not working in that house anymore, man." I chalked it up to superstition and kept the project moving and had to scramble to find another contractor. Thankfully, I was able to, but then the noises started. Late at night, when the crew had gone home, I started hearing it. Barking. Low, desperate whimpers at first, like a dog left outside in the cold. But the longer I sat in that house, the more it changed. The whimpers turned into deep, grave growls, snarls that rattled the window panes. One night, I was alone in the master bedroom, reviewing some stuff. Looking back, I was a bit of a perfectionist. It's a gift and a curse in the flipping business, but then, that's when I heard scratching. Long, slow scratches from inside the walls. I turned off my phone's music, listened, and heard a sound. It was moving. Something was inside the walls, moving from room to room. I stood up, heart pounding. My first thought, rats, squirrels, something logical. But then I heard it, a single, deep bark. I turned around so fast I nearly tripped, but there was nothing, just an empty, rotting room. That was the first night I thought about walking away. It had to be my mind playing tricks on me. I was stressed out. I had a lot of money on the line, and a lot of my own money, and my girlfriend was stressing out about how much time I was spending on this project and away from her. But I pushed on. Like I said, I had too much money on the line. The next night, my plumber Franco stayed late in the early evening to check the basement pipes. He was down there for all of 20 minutes when I heard him scream. I ran downstairs and found him standing in the middle of the basement, flashlight shaking in his hand. His face was white as a sheet. "What happened?" I asked. He pointed toward the far end of the basement, where the walls were still lined with old wooden crates. "Something moved," he whispered. I started to tell him he was just imagining things. He swears he saw a pair of eyes, low to the ground, watching us from the shadows. They weren't human. They weren't right. They were glowing, he said. I didn't see it myself, but I heard something. The barking from the night before, it started again, loud and too close. Franco dropped his tools and ran up the stairs so fast he tripped and smacked his face against the railing. I followed, slamming the basement door shut behind me. Neither of us said a word. We just stared at each other, breathing hard. Franco never came back to the site. He sent one of his guys to finish the job. Again, I should have left then. I should have just walked away, but I didn't. The night before an inspection, I went back one last time, alone. The house was silent, too silent. As I walked through, every floorboard creaked like a warning. When I reached the second floor, I saw it, the outline of paw prints. They were fresh, stamped into the dust, leading from the master bedroom to the front door. First of all, we renovated this house. There shouldn't have been this much dust. I heard a floorboard creak behind me. I turned, and for the first time, I saw it. A dark shape, low to the ground, crouching in the corner of the hallway. I didn't wait. I bolted down the stairs, out of the front door, and into my truck. I never went back. After all the renovations were completed, I had someone take pictures and a video for me to review. The house eventually sold, and I made a good return, but oddly, the house sat empty for months. I would drive by from time to time and wouldn't see much activity. The new owner was supposed to move in, but I don't know if they did or not. Maybe it was a second home, but the last I heard, the house was occupied. But the neighbors, they started calling the cops again, because at night, they hear barking, not from the street, not from any yard, but from inside the walls, just like they used to back in the day. The fake worker. Denver, Colorado, 2016. I've been in construction for nearly 15 years. I've worked high-rise jobs, underground digs, even some government projects where we weren't allowed to ask too many questions. But there's one rule I follow now that I never thought about before. I introduce myself to everyone on the job site because sometimes not everyone you see is actually supposed to be there. The job was a high-rise in downtown Denver, a massive project that was already months behind schedule. The bosses were desperate, hiring any crew they could find, bringing in workers without the usual vetting. That's why I didn't think much of it when I saw the guy in the dirty hard hat. He stood near the steel framework, just watching. At first, I figured he was just another day worker, but something about him felt off. For starters, he never spoke, never nodded, never even acknowledged anyone. Most guys on the site, especially on a tough job like this, talk, swear, complain about the pay, bitch about the foreman, but this guy, nothing. And then I noticed something weirder. He never ate. Lunch break came and went, and he just stood there, near the scaffolding, staring up at the building. That night, I asked my buddy Mike if he knew who the guy was. Who? Mike asked, frowning. The guy in the torn-up hat, the one who doesn't talk, I said. Mike just shook his head. Man, I don't know who you're talking about. A few days later, I saw him again. This time, he was walking toward the upper scaffolding. I watched as he climbed up the steel beams, but when I turned the corner to follow, he was gone. It was impossible. There was no way down from that section without taking the ladder, and I was standing right there. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I asked around again, but no one had seen him. No one knew his name. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying it in my head, trying to find some logical explanation. Maybe he was just quicker than I thought. Maybe he was just another quiet worker who didn't want to talk. I told myself to let it go. I should have left the job then and there, but I didn't. A week later, it happened. A section of rebar collapsed from the upper floors, falling nearly 50 feet. 3 guys were rushed to the hospital, one with a shattered leg, another with a crushed arm. The site went into chaos. The foreman started barking orders, trying to figure out how it happened. That night, they reviewed the security footage to find out what went wrong. The next morning, we all got called into a meeting. The foreman looked pale. Did any of you see this man? He asked, holding up a grainy screenshot from the site's cameras. I felt my blood turn to ice. There he was, the silent worker with the torn hard hat, standing right in the middle of the site, just watching. The timestamp on the footage, moments before the rebar collapsed. We checked the sign-in logs, the hiring records, even the background checks from the labor agency. No one by that description had ever been hired. No one. I felt sick. I knew what I saw. I'd seen him almost every day for weeks. Eventually, the company started going through older security footage just out of curiosity. And that's when they found something shocking. He had been there since the first day of construction, before any workers had even been hired, just standing, watching. The footage from the foundation pour weeks earlier, he was there, standing in the trench before it was filled with concrete. I quit the job 2 days later. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with that place, that maybe the site itself didn't want to be built. But the night before I left, I woke up around 2 a.m. to a sound outside my apartment. A faint clinking, like someone tapping metal against metal. I pulled back my curtain, and there was nothing there. I swore I was going out of my mind. The building was completed 6 months later, but weird things kept happening. Workers kept getting injured. Equipment malfunctioned in ways that made no sense. Now, whenever I work on a new site, I make a point to introduce myself to every worker I see. Because the truth is, sometimes not everyone working alongside you is really supposed to be there. And some of them, they aren't there to work. They're there to watch, to wait. And when the time is right, they're there to make sure someone never gets to see another workday.